Before we get to the story, I'd like to say thanks so much for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading cosmic horror related stories every single day. So if that sounds good, please drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot, especially when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. I'm not a person who talks about herself much, so I'll keep this part short. My name is Remy Holt. I'm 42 years old, and for the past 3 years, I have managed a solar array installation in the high desert of New Mexico for a rural electric cooperative called Corder Valley Power. The array is a few hundred acres of panels stretched across flat scrubland about 40 minutes outside a small town called Corder. I live on the property in a converted equipment shed I gutted and rebuilt myself the first summer I was here. It has good bones, a decent kitchen, and a porch that faces east, which means I get the sunrise every morning over the mountains, and that has never once gotten old. The work is not complicated. I drive the rows, I check the connections, I monitor the output numbers, I fix what breaks. When something needs a part, I order it. When something needs a specialist, I call one. There is not much that needs a specialist. I am good at the work, and I like the desert, and I like being left alone, so the arrangement has suited me fine. My nearest neighbor is a woman named Dottie Reese, a retired geologist who lives about a mile up the road. She is in her late 60s, talks the way some people play piano, constantly and without much thought to whether an audience is present. But she is sharp, and she is honest, and she makes good coffee. In the absence of anyone else within reasonable distance, we have become something like friends. I have a dog named Fitch. He is a border collie mix, mostly black with a white chest, and he is the best behaved animal I have ever been around. He works the property with me during the day, rides in the truck, sleeps at the foot of my bed. He is not a nervous dog. He does not spook easily. I say that because it matters later. The job makes sense to me in a way that most things don't. Sun comes up, the panels collected. The numbers reflect what was collected. The math is simple, and it always works. I have run this array through summer heat that softened the asphalt on the access road, through dust storms that dropped visibility to 30 feet, through 2 separate equipment failures that would have sent a less stubborn person looking for different work. The numbers always added up. 7 months ago, they stopped. High solar activity is not unusual, and it is not a problem. A strong flare event actually pushes my output numbers up because the radiation intensity increases and the panels respond to that. I have run this array through several active periods, and I know what the yield should look like when the sun is putting out more than usual. I know the numbers the way a baker knows how long a particular dough needs. Not from a chart, from 3 years of watching them. So when the output during a significant flare event came in lower than it should have, I noticed. Not dramatically lower, not enough to set off any alarms at the cooperative or show up as a fault in the system, just thin, like the yield had been watered down. I ran my checks. I ran them twice. The panels were clean, aligned, functioning without any faults. No shading from cloud cover, no dust accumulation, no degradation in the cells. I called the equipment manufacturer, and a very patient technician walked me through every diagnostic I had already run and found exactly what I had found, which was nothing wrong. I didn't mention to him the other thing. The light during those flare windows had started to feel wrong. I know how that sounds, and I would not be saying it if I had any more precise language available to me. It wasn't dimmer. It wasn't a different color. If you had pointed a camera at the sky during one of those windows, it would have looked like a normal, clear desert afternoon. But standing in, it felt like standing in a room where someone had just stopped talking, a quality to it that made the back of my neck tighten. I have worked in full desert sun for 3 years, and I have never once had the urge to get out of it. During these windows, I wanted to be inside with the door shut. Fitch started refusing to go out to the array during peak flare activity. He would ride with me to the edge of the access road and then just stop, sit down in the seat and look at me. I have never had to physically coax that dog to do anything in 3 years. I left him at the edge of the road and drove out alone. And when I came back, he was sitting exactly where I'd left him, watching the direction I'd gone with an expression I didn't like and chose not to examine too closely. I went to Dottie's on a Sunday to borrow a pipe wrench and stayed 2 hours, which is pretty standard for a visit to Dottie's. She has a back room that looks like a geological survey office that lost a fight with a library. Maps on every surface, old equipment on the shelves, notebooks going back 15 years, stacked in columns that seem structurally ambitious. She also has a running setup of monitoring instruments. She keeps going out of habit and what she calls professional stubbornness. Ground vibration sensors, a barometric station, electromagnetic monitoring equipment. She tracks things for no one in particular, files the readouts, and compares them against historical records she has kept herself over the years. I mentioned the output problem while she was rooting around a drawer looking for the wrench. I said it the way you mention something that's been mildly annoying you, not the way you mention something that has been sitting in your chest like a stone for 3 weeks. I expected her to nod and say something about equipment tolerances. She stopped looking for the wrench. She went to the back room and came out with a folder and put it on the kitchen table and sat down. She didn't say anything. She just let me look at it. The folder had printed readouts from her electromagnetic monitoring equipment, spanning the last 4 months. I am not a scientist, and I cannot read those readouts the way she can, but she walked me through what she was seeing, pointing at the lines on the pages with the end of a pencil. During each major flare event in the past 4 months, the electromagnetic energy reaching the ground was not what it should have been. Not a dropout, not interference from equipment or atmosphere, an absorption. A portion of the incoming energy was being soaked up before it arrived at the surface, and the portion getting soaked up was not random. It was consistent, deliberate in the way a pattern is deliberate. I asked if she had told anyone. She said she had emailed a contact at a university research department she'd collaborated with years ago. The contact asked for the raw files, she sent them, and a week later got back a brief reply saying the readings were most likely instrument error and recommending she recalibrate her equipment. Dottie has the kind of expression that doesn't change much, regardless of what she's thinking. But something moved behind her eyes when she said that. She told me she had been running those instruments for 15 years and calibrated them on a set schedule, and they were not in error. Then she said the thing that kept me up that night. She said it was getting bigger, not the flares themselves, the absorption. Each event, whatever was pulling a portion of that energy out of the incoming wave, was pulling a slightly larger portion than it had taken the time before. A small increase each time, small enough that you'd miss it if you weren't running the numbers carefully. But Dottie ran her numbers carefully. She showed me the progression on the page, event by event, each one a little deeper than the last. She said it the way she would have said the creek is running low this year. A fact, a thing she had measured and recorded and was now reporting. I drove home with a pipe wrench and a feeling I couldn't name cleanly, like standing at the edge of something and not being able to see the bottom. The flare activity picked up over the following 3 weeks. It made the weather report the same way a minor storm system makes the weather report, mentioned, and then moved past. The cooperative sent an advisory that output numbers might fluctuate. I confirmed I was monitoring. Everyone moved on. I started feeling it in my body. During each peak window, my head would start to hurt, not behind my eyes, the way a normal headache builds, but at the base of my skull, and it would move forward slowly over the course of the event. It was not pain exactly. It was pressure, external pressure, like the air was leaning in. My vision didn't blur, but it sharpened past the point of being useful. Everything too crisp, too outlined, like the world had been run through a filter that stripped out the softness. Colors in the desert are already intense. During those windows, they became almost aggressive. I started going inside when Fitch went to the edge of the access road and wouldn't go further. I told myself it was practical. If my dog had better instincts about it than I did, I should follow his lead. I am not too proud for that. One afternoon, I was inside at my monitor watching the output numbers during a moderate event when I looked up through the window and saw the heat shimmer above the array doing something I had never seen in 3 years of watching desert heat do strange things. Heat shimmer moves in slow rolling waves off warm ground. It drifts, it curls, it follows the logic of hot air rising. This was moving the wrong way. Above the array, in a column that started at panel level and went up until I lost it against the sky, something was moving towards the sun. Not drifting, moving with the kind of organization that heat does not have. A column of something going up and outward and away, too structured to be weather, too consistent to be a trick of light, too large to fit into any category I had available to me. I watched it for about a minute, then it stopped. The shimmer went back to doing normal shimmer things. The output numbers were fine. The sky looked like the sky. I sat down on the kitchen floor because it seemed like the right distance from the window. Fitch came over and put his head in my lap, and we stayed like that for a while. I thought about who to call, and the list of useful options was very short. My brother Will teaches high school physics in Albuquerque. He is 37, more patient than I am, and significantly more willing to believe in things he cannot immediately see and touch. We are not alike in most ways, but we have always understood each other, which is its own kind of closeness. I called him on a weeknight after I'd gone back and forth about it for 4 days and decided that carrying it alone was making me worse company than usual, even for myself. I told him everything. I started with the output numbers and worked my way through Dottie's readings, the quality of the light, the headaches, the shimmer moving the wrong direction. I told it straight, the way I would have given a report to the cooperative. No drama, just the sequence of things. Will did not interrupt me once, which, if you know, will is its own kind of signal that something landed. When I finished, there was a pause, and then he told me carefully that there had been some conversation in a professional network he was part of. Educators and researchers in adjacent fields, he said, the kind of loose, informal group that shares papers and observations. He said he had not been taking a particular thread in that group very seriously because some of the contributors had a tendency towards conclusions that outpaced their evidence. But a few weeks ago, a woman who worked in atmospheric monitoring in Iceland had posted something and then taken it down before most people saw it. Will had read it before it disappeared. She had been tracking the energy decay rate of recent flare events as they traveled from the sun, and the numbers were not doing what they should. The decay was happening faster than the physics said it should happen, and it was not uniform across the incoming wave. It was directional. Like the energy was not simply dissipating, but being drawn toward a specific point. She had deleted the post and had not returned to the group. Will said he did not know what it meant. He said it probably meant nothing, and there was a reasonable explanation he was not qualified to identify. He said both of those things in a row, and I appreciated the honesty of it, that he was telling me what he hoped was true, and also that he was not sure. He asked if I was eating and sleeping okay. I told him to knock it off, and he laughed a little, which helped. After I hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a while, and then went outside because I had been going inside every time something felt off, and I was tired of letting my own front door become a place I hid. The sun was dropping toward the mountains. The sky was doing what desert sky does at that hour, that deep layered burn from orange at the horizon, going up through red into a blue so dark it was almost purple. It is one of the best things about living out here, and I have never taken it for granted. I looked at the sun the way you're not supposed to, just for a second, just at the edge of it. At the edge of it, something was moving that was not a flare. Solar flares move outward. They push away from the surface in arcs and loops, plasma following magnetic field lines back down. This was moving in the other direction, toward the surface, toward the sun. Something at the very edge of the disk that was pulling back toward the light, the way a hand closes around something it has picked up. I went inside. I locked the door. I have lived alone in the desert for 3 years, and I have never locked my door at night because there has never been anything I was worried about keeping out. That night, I locked it, and it still didn't feel like enough. The largest flare event in 11 years arrived on a Thursday without much ceremony. The news gave it a segment, mentioned the northern lights might push further south than usual, noted some expected radio interference, told people not to worry. The cooperative sent another advisory. My monitoring equipment flagged the incoming intensity, and I confirmed receipt. I went out to the array that morning before the peak window to check the connections one more time. Fitch rode to the edge of the access road and stayed in the truck without being told. I drove out alone. The morning was clear and still, no wind, which is unusual out here. The desert is almost always moving air around at some speed. That morning was completely still in a way that felt less like calm and more like held breath. I checked my connections. Everything was perfect. I drove back and went inside and watched the monitor. When the peak window hit, the output numbers dropped to nearly nothing. Not a fault, not a shutdown. Every panel was receiving full sun in perfect working order, and the yield was almost zero. I stared at the screen for a full minute, making sure I was reading it correctly. Then I drove out to the array. I have described what I saw above those panels to exactly 3 people, and I have not been happy with how it came out any of those times. Language is not built for it. I will do my best. The heat above the array was visible in a way that heat should not be visible, not shimmer. Something with more substance than shimmer. A column of something starting at the panels and going straight up. And where it passed, the view through it was warped. I could see the clouds above it bent and stretched like I was looking at them through the curved side of a glass. The column was maybe 30 feet across, and it went up until my eyes couldn't follow it anymore. I got out of the truck. I don't have a clean explanation for why, possibly because I have never in my life been able to leave a thing alone that I didn't understand. The sound stopped. I don't mean it got quiet. I mean sound ended. The hum of the equipment, the distant movement of air, the small baseline noise of being alive in a physical world, all of it just stopped. Not faded, ended. A silence with mass to it. A silence that you could feel pushing against your eardrums from the inside. I have never experienced anything like it, and I hope I never do again. I stood in the middle of my array in that total absence of sound, and I looked up. The sky directly above the column had gone shallow. I know that makes no sense, and I cannot make it make more sense. The sky is supposed to go up forever. That is the thing about sky. It has no ceiling. You look up, and there is just more of it until you run out of atmosphere, and then there is the black of space going on past any distance that means anything to a human brain. But above that column, the sky had stopped. It had become a surface instead of a depth. And against that surface, pressed flat against it from the other side, was the shape of something. Not a shape I can name. Not a form that maps to anything I have seen before or since. Just the impression of it. The outline of mass. The way you can tell how large something is from the shadow it casts, even when you cannot see the thing itself. What I got from that 8 seconds of looking was scale in a way that my brain processed and then flinched back from. An enormity that had nothing to do with being tall or wide. Something enormous the way time is enormous. The way distance between stars is enormous. A size that does not fit inside a human thought without doing damage to it on the way in. And it had been there for a very long time. I do not know how I knew that. I just knew it the way you know a room has been empty for years, even when everything in it looks the same. Something in the quality of its presence, the patience in it. Whatever was pressed against the other side of that shallow sky above my panels had been making that particular lean for longer than I had words for. 8 seconds, maybe 10. Then the sky went deep again. All at once, like a door opening up into a hallway that goes on and on. The sound came back in a wave. The output numbers climbed back to normal on the monitor in my truck. The column dissolved into regular heat shimmer and then into nothing. Fitch started barking from the truck cab, sharp and continuous. The way he barks at things he cannot see, but can smell. I walked back to the truck. I drove to Dottie's without going inside my house first. I did not want to be alone in a building and I did not want to stand outside, and I did not want to sit in my truck in my own driveway. So I drove the mile up the road and knocked on Dottie's door, and she took one look at my face and put the kettle on without asking anything. We sat in her kitchen for 2 hours. She made coffee and then more coffee. Her instrument room clicked and registered quietly in the background. At one point, she got up and looked at the readouts without saying anything, and then came back and sat down. The expression on her face was the same one she'd had when she showed me the folder. Not frightened, something more serious than frightened. The look of a scientist who has measured something she cannot account for and understands exactly what that means. We didn't talk much. We didn't need to. Sometimes the most honest thing two people can do is sit together in a kitchen and not pretend that words are going to fix anything. I took a leave of absence from the cooperative 3 weeks later. I told them I had some personal things to deal with, and they were understanding about it. I drove to Albuquerque and slept on Will's couch for 6 weeks. He lives in a neighborhood with small houses close together and kids on bikes and restaurants on the corner, and a level of ambient human noise I would normally find exhausting. It felt like the safest place I had ever been. I walked in the mornings before the heat built. I cooked dinner with Will 2 or 3 times a week. I slept more than I had in months. Fitch made friends with the neighbor's cat, which I never would have predicted. And the two of them spent afternoons on the back patio in a companionable silence I found myself envying. I went back to Corda after 6 weeks because it is my job and my house, and I am not built for running. The array was fine. The cooperative had logged a significant output dip during the big flare event and noted it as anomalous and moved on. Everything looked exactly the way it had always looked. The desert was the same. The sky was the same. The sun came up every morning over the same mountains and hit the same panels, and the numbers added up the way numbers are supposed to add up. But I think about the sun differently now. I spent 3 years treating it like infrastructure, a resource, the thing my entire operation was built around, reliable and constant, background the same way gravity is background, something you factor in and do not examine. I never once thought about what the sun looks like from somewhere else. I never thought about it as something that could be used. Whatever has been out there feeding on those flares has been doing it for longer than I can get my head around. The sun is 4.5 billion years old. I think about that number, and I cannot make it real. It is too large to hold, and whatever is pressing against the sky above my property during active periods, whatever has been incrementally taking a slightly larger portion of each event, has been patient in that same way. A patience that makes 4.5 billion years feel like something you could wait out. It is not done. The solar cycle will keep turning. The flares will keep coming. And whatever has been feeding on them will keep feeding, taking its slightly larger cut each time. And the sun will keep burning, and our numbers will keep mostly adding up. And most people will go their whole lives looking at that sky and never feeling anything wrong in the light coming down. I think about the woman in Iceland who posted something and then deleted it and never came back. I think about Dottie's contact at the university who looked at her files and sent back 2 sentences about instrument error. I think about all the monitoring equipment all over the world picking up signals that get explained away by people who have decided before looking that there is nothing unusual to see. I reoriented my panels south. It cuts my output, and I will have to answer for it in the quarterly report, and I have not yet decided what I will say. Something about optimizing the array angle for the seasonal shift. Something that sounds reasonable. Something that does not require me to tell my supervisors that I moved the panels because I could not stand the thought of whatever is up there feeding through my equipment. I watch the sky now the way Dottie watches her instruments. Steadily, without panic. The way you watch something you have measured and cannot change. I note the quality of the light. I note when Fitch goes to the edge of the road and won't go further. I note the headache building at the base of my skull during the active windows, and I go inside and I wait for it to pass. The sun comes up every morning, same as always, big and close and warm enough to run a power grid off, warm enough to grow crops, warm enough that every living thing on this planet has organized itself around the certainty of it. It's just that not all of that warmth is making it down to us anymore. Something up there is hungry. It has been hungry for longer than we have existed to feel the sun on our faces. And every flare, every burst, every eruption of light that we watch from satellites and report on the evening news and tell people not to worry about, it takes a little more than it took the last time. And not one of us looking up at that warm sky would ever know the difference.